welcome to our podcast, Cynchranici, where we know that nothing is a coincidence and thus everything is intentional. I am your psychedelic psychopomp, Chase Clarence Calloway, and in today's podcast, we are excited because not only is this our first video podcast, okay, so if you're listening to this on audio, then whatever, you're enjoying consistency. I'm proud of you. You're staying consistent with your C. You don't need to see me. But if you've been watching these on video, well, now you see me. That's wild, right? Before you were just looking at a whole drawing that I made, the podcast cover. But now it's actually my face. We got our moon. We got the backdrop, okay? And it's nice because this is not only our first video podcast, so you can see me, but this is our first video podcast because I have our first guest on Cynchranici. And this is a very special guest. This is a very special man. This man is radically awesome. This man is truly, definitely, very affirmatively, so many words, so many positive words to affirm. That's the one I wanted to land on. That he's an infinite individual. This person is a true infinite individual. And this podcast is all about how all of us as spaces, as infinitely individual spaces, are able to create this circumstance where we are connecting with one another. So I'm having Jonathan on this podcast because it seems synchronistic, literally, the way that his space has connected with my space through TikTok. Literally, on TikTok, I've faced a lot of trials and tribulations. I fasted 19 days straight, got that shit taken down, got everything that I shared to build up that TikTok and all the progress gone, and then kept fasting after that, had to grow another TikTok, and it's in this TikTok of doing live streams where I ended up getting moderators. And the main moderator that I have is named 7 Circles. So this is Jonathan's moniker, 7 Circles. 7 Circles represents how Jonathan is a conscious man. Quite a conscious man, quite a sharp man. Okay, that's what the 7 is. Your consciousness is a sharp scythe that separates you from all other forms of consciousness. So he knows that his consciousness subconsciously is separate from all other forms of consciousness. This is just where when we as forms of consciousness start to talk about God, now people want to abduct all of our consciousness and say, oh, I'm God, so you should use your consciousness to build my world. Because this is the alchemy. This is what we're talking about here. The fact is, when you're communicating, when you are experiencing life at all, that's because your mind is communicating to build a body that allows you to connect with other spaces. So your body is a structure that's being manifested by your mind consistently having internal sex. This is where we get your ego and your soul coming together. This is where we get your man and your woman coming together so you can be seen as a child of God. Okay, so all religions, when they talk about the child of God, that's, the consciousness of a space. So one space had an individual form of consciousness. Thus, that consciousness is the child of God, because the God is the spirit, the space that created the mind, which is communicating through that body. This is why you can have 1 million religions that are all saying that they're the one true God, but then you, being the observer of those religions, would have to conclude at some point, once you get lost in all their knowledge, that you are the one true God to even be able to make their knowledge real. So this is now where you get the two-way street. It's about a connection and it's a tango, baby. That's how the universe works, okay? So this is empathy. It's about consent. So I'm excited about this podcast because this is the first guest that we have on here. So we're going to be able to connect ideas. It's not just going to be me growing alone. It's not just going to be me, literally growing alone, connecting with my ideas alone, going through all my thought processes alone, doing my Virgo, Gemini, Taurus shit alone, basically. It's going to be pretty nice. because this man is very smart. Not only is he very smart, but he's near and dear to my heart at this point, because he is the one who's made me very aware that I'm not a life path number 2, which I was already not resonating with when I thought I was from years ago. And I was like learning about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. 2, what is it? I don't give a fuck. And now I have all my own number stuff that I have awakened myself to after that. So now that I have this special relationship with Virgo, and how Virgo in Zoroastrian astrology, or just in the Zoroastrian elements, before they get manipulated into a body, Virgo is number 11 because it's mutable earth. So this is where 11 is big Virgo energy. 11 is huge Virgo energy. And for Jonathan to come in here and let me know that I'm not a 2, which is a Sagittarius in this case, but that I'm a Virgo, okay? I'm not a Biden life path. I'm an Obama life path. It's very powerful, okay? How communication works, isn't it? That's why you're here. That's why you like to consume informational content. As all of us communicate every day, every single day, the more we communicate, we all grow together. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty cool. We're all developing each other's consciousness by creating ideas and sharing the ideas that we create. And then that's where, if you don't create the ideas that you're sharing, then, you know, it starts to show. And that's the point of referencing people and quoting people and blah, blah. But now we get colonizers, right? So colonizers are the white supremacist type people or systems that want to claim that they created the ideas that you created. So, for example, when Christians come over into my land, I as an indigenous man, when they come over to me and they tell me that they created everything that they want to steal from me, I can see that that's a lie. They just want to create everything that they steal from me. So now you get the colonization of all North and South and Central America. This is why Christians and Jews are actually obsessed with indigenous cultures, and they're obsessed with consuming indigenous cultures to create the religious texts that they use to justify slavery. It's that simple. So this is why I have Jonathan on the podcast. Not only did he make me aware of 11 and that Virgo structure number, and that's my life path, all right, but he also made me aware of his super dope idea, his very awesome way of communicating about how these Masons have created a matrix that is meant to make money matter by manipulating the minds of men. All that M energy. So it's no coincidence then that Jonathan's moniker for communicating about this topic is R.E.A.L.M with triple M. Metatron likes a triple M. So R.E.A.L M with a triple M is going to be huge in this podcast. It's all about how these different establishments are set up and working together to keep you drowning in your emotions. Because that's basically where Jonathan and I connect very deeply. We don't just connect on our love for numbers and how numbers structure our emotions, right? When we feel like connecting, numbers structure it, and that's awesome, and we love that. We also love how fasting is truly the road to superpowers, and we know that as well. And we really know that. And it's so awesome because religions know that. Again, they stole this shit from me as Hermes. The whole idea of walking on water is stolen from Hermes walking on water. It's stolen from Zarathustra talking about how when you as a space create a mind that can sustain itself in a way that raises its vibration instead of lowering its vibration, you're able to breathe life into new atmospheres. So that's the idea of like truly water fasting. Whereas when you don't water fast, you don't fast to connect with God in that way, you're going to drown in your emotions. And that scientifically plays out is you eating the food that's keeping you trapped in the vibration of the realm that you're in. So that's why this podcast is really important, okay? This is a very awesome man. I'm excited for you to hear everything that he has to say. He's naturally very spiritual because he has acclimated his body to nature, like Naruto going sage mode, okay? So it's all about the frog, sage mode, wisdom, wealth, okay? Because we're talking about true wealth and structure here. So welcome to the Wealth Podcast. There's so many wealth podcasts. True wealth is synchronicity. Okay, true wealth is spiritual health. That's why this podcast is the hardest podcast in existence. This is the most healthy spiritual podcast in existence. It's not only the most spiritual, it's also the healthiest. You're going to get all the keys for spirit, all the keys for space from Chase, and all the keys for health and wealth. It's lit. We're growing. All right. That's the whole point of the symmetry. Okay. Do you see why my tree is planted here? That's the whole point of symmetry. Mercury was called away to teach you how you as a space are chasing your desires. And your desire is simply to connect with a space outside of yourself. That's what connects all of us. That's the only reason we can talk. Okay. So everything from that's details, which is, again, 11, Virgo, Zoroaster, astrology. So thank you, Jonathan, for making me aware. Thank you for all the individuals in the universe and all the individuals that I've created life with up to this point for making me more aware of things in all their own ways. Because this is how it works. This is literally how all of life works. We can only be aware of ourselves. So when you know that we're creating life and thus all knowledge is made up, this is where you know that your imagination is actually God. And your imagination is what sent you into the realm that you're in so that you can experience space as a structure. And now this structure is only going to matter as much as you can express your imagination into it, right? But other people have their own imaginations for what they want your structure to do. So then this is where you get hell. So now that's, again, 11 energy. It's all that Virgo energy. It's about hell. It's about knowing that when you build a structure, you're managing and maintaining something, and that's stressful. And that's what hell feels like. And you know that you're in hell when you're experiencing a life that you're not in full control of. And that's what it means to connect with a space outside of yourself. So here I am, Virgo, Mercury, using all this Gemini 8 energy, okay, Spider-Man energy, to communicate with you about how space creates structure that allows it to connect with other space, that allows its spirit to be aware of another spirit. But really, we're all aware of each other's egos because we're all expressing our spirits as the ego, because your spirit doesn't exist if it doesn't imagine itself. So we're all infinitely individual in our indigenous imagination. That's the triple I then. But the point is that we can't relate our imaginations if we're not choosing to connect with something grounded. So this is where we get elements. This is where we get nature. This is where we get the idea of compromise and sacrifices, right? This is why people like to sacrifice and why the Masons that built R.E.A.L.M do a lot of sacrificing. You literally see in the Bible, Jesus is created as a superhero. He's the idea of a superhero stolen from Zarathustra. He's the idea that Zarathustra, the superhero who built astrology, okay, they transformed Zarathustra, the superhero who built astrology, into Jesus, the guy who built the Roman government, who's using astrology to enslave the world. Jesus didn't create astrology, but he's claiming to be the son of the man who created everything, even though fundamentally you can see that the people who created this idea are stealing everything from the man who built astrology, Zarathustra. So it's really them making an idea about how they want spiritual individuals like Zarathustra and people that the system was built for to sacrifice their individuality to the government that created this text. And that's the witchcraft of the Bible. That's what R.E.A.L.M is powered by. This is why the Masons, this is why the banking system overall justifies slavery and uses Jesus to justify slavery so hard. And now you can just go look at all the history and see like, dang, so they really just stole all the information from indigenous peoples and created a text that weaponizes the truth to sell lies. Yes. Now you know why movies are so relatable, right? So they've stolen all these truths and they're selling them in lies in the form of movies. So now these movies, they're all lies, but they're brought to life by the truth. And they only matter because they're ideas that have been relatable and created by indigenous individuals that these white supremacist Masons, these light supremacist colonizers want to consume, cannibalize, and then shit out to plant their own seed in and grow their own life. So I hope you enjoyed this episode because it's pretty important. I'm not exactly sure how I'll break it up. Maybe for audio, I'll keep it as one whole track. But for video, I'm going to have it be multiple videos. I think that's how I'll do it. And then, hey, whatever. The point is, you're about to tap into a pretty awesome episode. I had a lot of fun. So he had a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun talking behind the scenes too. So sometimes we just like be talking behind the scenes and be like, oh shit, we should probably start recording. People would probably want to hear how we're sharing ideas right now. Let's get into that. It's just time is of the essence. You know, time is always of the essence. So I'm not exactly sure how I'll cut up all of this audio. I'm thinking for a video, it will be in different sections, but the audio will be one whole podcast. So this will be however many hours, but in the video format, it's 40-minute increments. I think whatever, that'll just be easier. In general, you're going to learn a lot of cool things from Jonathan's perspective, because that's the whole point. When we know that all knowledge is made up, this is how we know that we're always going to learn new things when we meet new people. That's what makes the new people new, because they're connecting with ideas that you were not previously connected to. The whole point of being able to relate with individuals is that we're all having a human experience. So that's where air, consciousness, again, that's all of our wisdom with our numbers and Zoroastrian zodiacs and just elemental stuff. Okay, we know that 3 being the chi is the air. So that's the human. That represents how we all use our mind to breathe life into these bodies. And that's the human experience. So all of us as space are conscious of the human experience. No matter how infinitely individual we are from one another, we are connected by the human experience. Now, we all have different ideas on what it means to be human, but that's where it gets just more physical into the body, right? You have your mind that's invisible, and then you have your body. It makes your mind visible. So my mind, you can't see it, but it is the external air element that is choosing to create light and project it in a way to sustain a body. And then that allows me to manipulate this body. And then that's just where we're getting into 3, 4, 5 being manipulation. And now I can use this manipulation to build a family. And then boom, that's 6. Because, you know, you're going to have 6 to build a family. And what do you do when you build a family? You just express your form of consciousness. And by expressing that form of consciousness, we have the 7. And this is why 7 circles is a family man. In general, when you're a spiritual man, you're a family man. And this is why we understand that all spaces care about their individual families. So not only is every religion connected by space and separated by space, but every religion is manifested by one space wanting to connect with another space. We know that every religion is manifested to sustain a certain family. So that's the whole point of nature. That's the whole point of the numbers. That's the whole point of us being able to talk about life architecturally through numbers and be able to see how these energies play out in so many different layers and atmospheres and just realities of life. It's pretty wild. It's pretty gnarly. It's pretty awesome. It's synchronistic. Nothing's a coincidence. So without further ado, we're going to take a trip into the astral realm, reflect on our past lives, and touch back down to check out 7 circles, the man Jonathan.
Chillin' on the moon, just reflecting on my past life. Queens call me in to beat that womb to see if we can dance like asymmetry, triple balance in my seat. Spirits call me to who teaches my guesses will be back soon. I'm busy chillin' on the moon, just reflecting on my past life. Queens call me in to beat that womb to see if we can dance right. Asymmetry, triple balance in my seat. Spirits call me to who teaches my guesses will be back soon. I'm busy chillin' on the moon. Welcome to Synchronicity. This is our first episode with another mind beside myself. Like, you're used to me being here dissecting like the whole universe, how everything's created. We've led up very far to get up to the point where we can have our first guest also talk about how the world is created. And now we can just connect these ideas. We're gonna build, it's literally just like nature. It's lit. Please welcome Jonathan, 7 circles. The 7 is very important. We already know it's about your consciousness. So we have a very conscious man here with us today, and we're going to be dissecting his world. All right, not too much, but just dissecting how he dissects the world. And then we can just get really deep in our Virgo energy, okay? Because there's a lot of details to life that make these demons work, that make angels send messages, that make people imagine who God is, and that make us just want to do anything. So, hello, Jonathan.
Hey.
How are you?
How are you? I'm good. Thank you.
Yes, I'm also good. I'm excited to have you here. I would like to say for the audience that I do believe you are, in fact, a brilliant man.
Appreciate it. Touche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there are 3 things that I want to get into for all of us. Mainly just the topics of spirituality, which would be the space that Jonathan is coming from. Psychedelics, which would be how Jonathan connects with himself and how he feels about the way in which the world connects with itself. And then the physical aspect of what we're getting into is Jonathan's creation, R.E.A.L.M, with 3 M's. Okay, so that's triple M to the realm. The whole point of R.E.A.L M is to very cleanly communicate about all the ways in which we could just say the system, right? I guess like the banking system, the light supremacist system, because we don't even have to get racist, but it does manifest in whiteness. But the light supremacist system, and really the religious system, and how it oppresses people in ways that Jonathan really only knows because he's a whole chef. I mean, he's a very multifaceted man, but he's a whole chef. So that means that he has seen what goes in all of your food. You haven't seen what goes in your food like Jonathan has. So just from that perspective right there, he's coming from a totally different space than most people. So my first question for you, Jonathan, is how was your general background growing up for you to feel like you are different from other people? Because you know that you're different from other people. Like, we know you're a unique individual. Like, when you hop on this channel, you are an infinite individual. Like, that's beyond God. Okay, God is like someone's idea of a creator. But when you're an infinite individual, that's triple I. You've got both your eyes. You can see duality, and you can do anything you want. You're beyond God. That's what I mean by being a spirit. Like, first there's space, and then once all of us is space, imagine ourselves, that's God. But God's always going to be limited by our imagination. So I'm just reminding you that you are not limited by your imagination. You are infinitely creating your imagination so you can see your space. Otherwise, your space would not exist. So I'm interested in how your imagination, you feel like, has developed based on your unique lifestyle and how that separates you with your 7 from everyone else.
Yeah, so I think this is perfect to start off. I want to say, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm from Queens, New York. So I talk fast. I'm from the East Coast. I got a fast pace about me, fiery energy. I'm an Aries. I come from a family of 7 brothers and sisters, including me. There goes that number again, 7. I am directly in the middle. I have 4 sisters. I have 2 brothers, 2 older sisters, and 1 older brother, 2 younger sisters, and 1 younger brother. I'm directly in the middle. Wow. So with this being said, I grew up in a household where we were uniquely different than our neighbors around us. We were different in many ways. One way is that my father, who was a carpenter, he did not believe in hospitals, so he delivered all of us at home. we all were home birth. We
Whoa.
didn't have I don't have a birth certificate. I proudly say that. And my mother, who's an educator, has her doctor's degree. At the time, she didn't. She ended up homeschooling all of us. So I didn't go to public school until the age of 11 or 12.
It's not.
We were all raised as a vegetarian, strict vegetarian diet. We were limited to a very small amount of television. And at that time, I'm an 80s baby. At that time, you don't have cable. You have 5 or 6 channels anyway. We didn't have a religion. My dad grew up as a Christian. He was from Brooklyn, but they didn't force religion upon us. So I was able to think freely based on what I wanted to think. There were many other things within our family that was quite unique, quite different from the average person. But I'm going to start there just to give the audience a foundation of where I'm coming from.
That's a lot of responsibility, it sounds like, growing up with that many siblings.
Yeah. We had good times and we were creative by nature. What I realized is that when you leave a child alone, because they have an imagination, they create the most extreme things ever.
Right.
They're not constructed and they're not directed on like what to create. They just create out of their imagination. So we would take like radio control cars apart and we would take the motor out. We would find some wire, something similar to a paperclip, like copper wire, at the bottom of a telephone booth, and we would wrap it around the motor and then put a plastic piece on the top so that it stays, and we would connect it to a paper cup and we would mold a type of like mixer blade. So then we would take like milk or heavy cream and we would attach it to a 9-volt battery and we would mix up the heavy cream and turn it into butter. We would do certain types of things that just kind of sparked our mind. We grew up not having so much money. So like in the wintertime, when we were extremely cold, we would fill up glass bottles of hot water, bring it in our bed, and we have a heater overnight. Just being creative in that type of way. We were forced to be creative.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's very real. So you grew up in a socioeconomic situation where you basically had to recycle a lot.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I won't say so much recycling. I'll say so much having what do they call it? Ingenuity. And I guess that ties into creativity again. One thing that I can say is that growing up the way that I grew up, I didn't know it at the time, but it was the perfect foundation for me to develop characteristics in myself that I need at this time. So being original, having courage, when we would have block parties when in New York, or when we would go out and everybody's eating hot dogs and hamburgers and I'm looking like, man, I want some of that, but everybody is engaged in eating candy. I didn't eat sugar up until about the age of, I want to say maybe 10 or something. And you want these things, but you know that you can't have them. It gives you a certain type of strength. It gives you a certain type of just being original. And at that time, it seems like a downfall. But later on in life, you realize that your greatest weakness was actually your greatest strength.
Would you like to share with us real quick your experience tasting candy for the first time?
Wow. Yeah, that was a big one. So like I said, we were homeschooled, right? And we got the opportunity to go to camp, summer camp in the summertime. It was at a public school, PS 34. And this was a great experience for us because we finally got to go out and interact with children around our age. We had some really close neighbors at the time, and they will always have candy. So they also were going to the camp as well. One time, they was like, yo, like, let's try this candy. Nah, I don't want to try it. Candy's bad. But then they was like, let's try it. So my sister tried it, my brother tried it, and I was like, all right, cool, I'll try it. So there were things like Jolly Ranchers, things like Blow Pops, things like Tootsie Rolls, Bazooka, Bubblegum, all of the basic candies, Now Laters, Laffy Taffies. And I remember there was a piece of candy that I grabbed. I don't remember what kind it was, but my first time ever eating candy. I was so excited. I took the wrapper off. I put it in my mouth and I began to chew. and what I tasted was sugar and sweetness, and then right behind that, I tasted literally poison. And I'm like, what is this? And then I begin to spit it out, like, but still chewing it, but spitting it out. And my neighbors were like, no, don't spit it out. You gotta swallow it. That's the good stuff. That's the good stuff. I knew something was wrong. The way that they advertised it and everybody was so, it was so glorified. And I was so excited and ready to try it. And when I did, it literally tasted like poison.
Mm-hmm.
No filter, straight poison. So with a little bit of sugar. So I knew something was wrong at that stage in my life. I've always been different. I've always been spiritual. Even though all my brothers and sisters grew up similar to the way that I did, I am the black sheep of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I will meditate when I was younger. I had a close attachment to different types of animals. If there was a bird, I would try to save it, if it had fallen down. When it came to just animals, and even I was a fighter growing up. So even like people that were bullied, I didn't like bullies.
Absolutely.
So I was big on fighting, and me being an Aries and having a fiery energy, I was really, really tough. I learned to cultivate that energy and harness it in a direction that's beneficial.
Definitely. Yeah, Aries is big war energy. So you've got all the passion.
Yeah.
All the passion. So you've learned how to harness it. You learn how to harness it. You're not trying to headbutt the world into submission.
Nah,
like a lot of Aries be doing. Right. But yeah, this is the power of anger for sure, because anger does get shit done. So clearly you have a lot of very intelligent anger that I would like to get into when considering your creation of R.E.A.L.M, because that is just one simple experience of you having an interaction with a very normal thing that most people find very tasteful. Like, people love candy, but because you have a different background where you weren't desensitized to sugar and chemicals growing up, you were more sensitive and able to detect the fact that there's hella poison in all this candy and these chemicals are not good for our body. So you already, like, that's you working from a different space to be able to connect with the world in a way that the world isn't programmed to connect with itself. So your creation of R.E.A.L.M is like essential in that way, because it's coming from like a very calculated anger. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So for anyone to want to change anything, you have to be angry about the way that it is. So I guess to introduce R.E.A.L M, what is the main thing in the world, based on how you've grown up from your childhood, that makes you angry as an Aries? What's the thing that really gets your fire going?
What really does it for me is when people are innocent, when you have children, when you have animals, just nature, and people who have the power or the authority to take advantage of it. It's something about like taking advantage of someone that is unconscious that really gets me fired. That really gets me fired up.
Agreed.
And
1,000,000%.
I just don't like it. I just don't like it. So I feel that there's an internal responsibility. Like, I don't even want to do this. Like, I try to run away from my spirituality a lot of times, and I can't. This is just who I am, and so this is what I was made to do. This is what I was created to do. This is part of my mission here in this incarnation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And only you can do it.
Yeah. I mean, we all designed ourselves for a specific task,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So your task, you feel like, and 100%, but you feel it strongly, and your main passion is getting justice for unconscious people who are being taken advantage of by more conscious people, perhaps.
Yeah, I won't say so much justice. And the word justice, I think about it a lot. And I don't even know. Well, I don't even know if I thought about justice, and I don't even know if justice is even just to play off of revenge, because I'm not looking to revenge anybody. Even the people that are doing these things, I believe that these people are hurt, and I
Right.
know hurt people, and I believe that
Exactly.
they are unconscious in a way,
Right. Right.
and they just want to do better for their family. You know, they want to get more money and things to better for their family. So I think that, well, not I think, I am doing this to increase awareness. I'm doing this to bring a different perspective so that people, because if you have like a saying, if you know better, then you do better.
Right.
And even though a lot of times people do know, like they know and they disobey anyway, their inner intelligence, I think the majority of the people, that if they knew better, they would do better. So
I agree.
mainly a good percentage of what I'm doing is to bring awareness, but not just that, to also offer a solution. And when I say solution, I don't mean a solution. I mean a SOULUTION, a solution.
And what is the solution?
Well, the solution is connecting back to yourself.
Exactly.
So-
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah. So I believe that there are 3 powers, or 4 powers, if you will. That there's this great power that, I don't know what you want to call it, but it makes the universe go round, and the universe makes the earth go round, and us being on the earth, right? We're connected to the earth. This is taken from the book, the Tao Te Ching, an ancient Chinese book. They talk about the 4 powers. So if man is not in alignment with the earth, then he's off balance from the equation. So I think part of the solution is to get back in alignment with the earth. And
Yep.
this is what R.E.A.L.M has done. R.E.A.L M has successfully removed people from connecting with the earth. And they have done this in many different ways, through the shoes that we wear, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that rubber,
Yeah.
if you have rubber on a pair of pliers and you get a touch of wire, you don't get electrocuted because the rubber is an insulator. But
Exactly.
the same thing happens with your shoes. We're unable to connect with the field of the earth because of the fact of what we're wearing, and it goes in many different directions like that. So I guess this is a good time to actually break apart R.E.A.L.M and kind of discuss what R.E.A.L M is all about.
Yeah. So before we dissect every letter of R.E.A.L M and like the branch out of tree, who is responsible for R.E.A.L M?
Who? I would say, so this is a good question. It's a really good question. You know, if you look at history, Rome effectively has taken over the world. They have completed their mission.
Right.
And a lot of people think that Rome has actually ended. You know, Rome wasn't built, it's the same. Rome wasn't built in this many years, and Rome didn't fall in this many years. But ladies and gentlemen, newscast, breaking news, Rome is actually still active. It's just wrapped up in a different fabric. It goes by a different name.
Right.
So
People still
is
care about
why-
the Vatican.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, even there's a place called Jersey, right, over in Europe, and then you have a New Jersey over here. There was a place called York over there in Rome. You have a New York. This is why in New York they call it the Empire State, because that's where they begin to build the empire, and this is why you have the Empire State Building, because this is how this. And think about the first 13 colonies that actually happened. It was in New York was one of the main ones. So when you look at the football fields and how that's very similar to a Coliseum, and even when you think about football, you use Roman numeral, right? It's taking Rome but tweaking it into a modern day age. But we are still effectively in Rome, and this goes deep into, of course, the Vatican. You know, there's 2.8 billion people that subscribe to being a Christian, and there are 34,000 different denominations of Christianity. And the Bible
That's a
that
lot.
we practice is a whole lot. It's more than 25. It's more than 25% of the world's population.
Right.
More than 25%. So I mean, I did an interview with somebody.
Those
from Fiji.
crusades worked.
Oh, they're very effective. They have a fiery energy, an
Right.
energy of just spreading across the continent. But we can get into that later. But I think everybody knows that the Vatican is responsible for creating the Bible. This happened in 325 AD. So the Bible is the main thing that is creating this realm system. So it came from out of the Vatican, but we know also that the Vatican is directly tied into the Roman Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm. And we do know then that the Vatican created the Bible by stealing everything they could from indigenous individuals to create their own version of spirituality. And that's really why it goes so hard, because there is truth in it, but it's just weaponized truth.
you know, this is very true. The Vatican, I guess we'll call them the Vatican, or we'll call it Rome.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't really put one individual on it. You can't say it's Bill Gates. You can't say it's this guy, because it's not. It's bigger than that.
Yeah, one could say, I guess, like the Masons.
I mean, you could
the
say
secret
that too,
societies.
But then you have, right, the Illuminati. You have the 13 families. It goes really, really deep. So I guess just for conversational sakes, for I guess it's easier for me to say Rome.
For sure.
And we were talking about what were we talking about?
We're talking about the Bible and how the Bible was made up by the Vatican by stealing the spirituality of Zoroastrianism, for example. Like that was a whole indigenous system that really everything in the Bible is just taken from that, but it's a new version based on how they wanted to employ R.E.A.L.M to enslave the indigenous people that were freely expressing themselves before they had their spirituality stolen and remixed into what we now call the Bible today.
Absolutely. And this is what Rome does. They steal everything. This is why, if you look at, let's just use the United States as an example, it is a collaboration of everything stolen. It is a melting pot of stolen things, from from paintings to art, well, I just say arts, from arts to foods to culture to religion, clothes,
words.
everything. That's exactly what they do. It's called plagiarism in many different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that's why it's of course so effective, because it is about this basic energy that makes life work, but everyone has a different relationship with it. And that's basically what I mean. I'm pretty sure what most people mean when they're using the word spirituality. Like, it's about your relationship with the energy that makes life work. And then people want to think of that as God. And then that's the whole thing of learning, like, how does someone else's life work versus your life? And then, oh, so someone else must have a different God than you. And it seems that R.E.A.L.M, a big way that Rome, the Vatican, the white supremacist regime or whatever, the Masonic order, it seems that the main way that they enslave people is underneath the idea that we're all created by one God. And that because we're all created by one God, they deserve to do everything that we're going to be talking about here with these letters and these systems. But just, letting everyone know that this is the rationale of why the Jewish justice system feels justified in using Jesus to spread their Jupiter. And then Jupiter is, of course, a planet of expansion. So this is why we can see that Rome is obsessed with expanding across the world and using Jesus, using the J, to do so. And it's, of course, always going to be about teaching you that you're not good enough alone. They're going to use Hermeticism against you, because we know they stole Hermeticism and Zoroastrianism. It's on the internet. Like, everyone can just look at it, see like all the details of how much they love Hermeticism. Hermeticism is supposed to be what I have with Cynicism here now, which is just teaching you how to create your own heaven. The moment you know how to create your own heaven, no one can possibly teach you that you're not good enough to be alone and that you need to serve their God. It's just not possible. So people have specifically been put into a very low vibration for R.E.A.L.M to be successful. And we can trace this really back to, I would say, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, where humans before that point, like, that shit was in Egypt. Like, that was definitely because of the people who employed R.E.A.L.M. Like, the people who employed R.E.A.L.M 100% burned down the Library of Alexandria after stealing all the information for themselves. And now we can see that their rationale for doing this is because they don't feel like humans deserve to have all that information that used to be free. So now we can see why we're in a world where we're supposed to pay for air. We're supposed to pay for water. We're supposed to pay for food, because people who steal everything don't feel like the creators of that information deserve the freedom that we inherently made the information from. We're fighting. It's very nefarious, basically, like how deep the motivations for R.E.A.L.M go. But once you know this, now it's just like way easier to navigate the world that you're in. I'm very sure that the more we get into R.E.A.L.M, the world's just going to make more sense for everybody. So now that we got that out the way, Jonathan, what does R stand for?
Yeah, so R, right, the first letter of realm. I think it's important to address the original definition of realm, R-E-A-L-M, because if you look on the dictionary, if you look on Wikipedia, also if you look in biblical terms, as is, what is the regular definition of realm? They have many definitions, but one that they can all agree on, such as biblical, the regular dictionary, Webster's dictionary, or it could have been Stanford, and then as well as Wikipedia, is that they say that realm is a kingdom, a literal kingdom. Realm is a kingdom. And they give an example that the German Empire was also a realm. That's one of the examples that they give. So it's important for people to note that. Like, because when I think about realm, before this came to me, I would think about like a dream realm, like a different dimension or something of that nature. But it's literally defined as a kingdom. A kingdom. So that's important to note.
A realm is a kingdom.
Foremost. Yeah.
Synonymous.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. So when we talk about the R, what is the R in realm? Well, R, I think it's one of the most important things, and this is kind of what we were talking about. It has to do with religion. It has to do with religion. And if you know anything about religion, ladies and gentlemen, is that many people have died over religion.
Yeah.
Many people get triggered times 100 when you talk about religion in the context that they don't like. When it comes to corporate America, I was a chef, as you mentioned earlier, for about 2 decades, maybe 27 years, but really professionally for 2 decades. And there are things that you can't mention in the professional arena, probably more now than ever, because everything's becoming more politicized. But you can't talk about religion. You can't talk about politics. And they definitely don't want you talking about the V now as well too.
Right.
So those are main things that people really get triggered about. So religion is a big one. I don't have all of the stats in front of me right now, but as I did mention earlier, that over the quarter of the population identify as a Christian. And there are many other religions as well too. You have Hinduism, which has many gods in it. You have Islam. You have Taoism. You have, what is the one in Jutu? They practice in Japanese. Jiti, I forget how to say it. And you have many other ones, Buddhism, etc. Right? They all have a different concept, but the biggest one is Christianity. So I'm mainly going to be focusing on that today. I interview a lot of people. I interviewed a guy from Uganda. I interviewed a girl from Fiji, and I asked them, like, what is your spiritual practice? What is the religion out there? And they always have to say it's Christianity. Christianity. It has effectively spread it across the whole entire globe. It has been very, very successful.
Yeah.
And what that mainly does is it really brainwashes, it conditions people to think outside of themselves. The minute you begin to look for something outside of yourself, and the minute you begin to, love something outside of yourself before you love something inside of yourself, you have been effectively brainwashed and controlled without even knowing it.
You just got abducted.
Absolutely. I think it was Carl Jung. He said that those that look on the outside dream, but those that look on the inside awaken. So those that look on the outside dream, those that look on the inside awaken. Many people who subscribe to the narrative of being a Christian, they're waiting for that day for Jesus to return, a rapture. They're waiting for that day for heaven for them to go to heaven. They're waiting for that day. And while they are waiting, we're seeing their bodies rot. We're seeing wars being fought. We're seeing people losing their lives, family being split apart.
Right, destroying the environment.
Destroying the environment in many, many different ways. And we know what goes on in these Vatican places. We know all of the things that came out about children that were touched in inappropriate ways, and just so on and so forth. We can go down and down and down and down the rabbit hole. But it depends if you are conscious enough. And I assume that those that are watching are, because this vibration wouldn't attract anybody that isn't. To really take note on what religion has really done to the mind of humanity. It goes really, really, really deep, really, really, really deep. So yeah, so it's interesting. The first 4 parts of R.E.A.L.M has to do with imprisoning the mind, the body, and the soul of the individual. So religion having to do with spirituality, having to do with your soul, your spirit, however you want to use that. You can use it synonymously. But religion has really captured, has really, like I said, imprisoned their soul. Yep. So a lot of people, they lost a lot of power, when they became indoctrinated in the religion system, unfortunately.
Absolutely. You can only lose power when you're looking for a God outside of yourself. You're looking for someone to create your life instead of you just taking responsibility for your own power. But it seems that when we get into like the internal reason why spirits even resonate with religion, it's almost always because they don't feel like they either are responsible for their power or they don't want to be responsible for their own power. And then that's where we see that really people who are very religious, they just haven't dealt with a lot of negative things, because that's where it comes into the feeling like sin portion of religion, where you feel like you have to cling on to a system outside of yourself, because if you are just left alone with your feelings, then you're not good enough. Like, you're not good enough for God. Like, it seems that a lot of people feel like they're not good enough for God. It seems that a lot of people have a lot of self-hate. And really, we can see that the entities who are employing R.E.A.L.M definitely have a lot of self-hate for them to create systems based on racism or sexism or just like all these isms or oppression in general. Like, you can't really love yourself if you're building systems out of slavery. But the lie, of course, of almost all religions is that this God outside of you loves you more than you love yourself, which to me, I'm saying is a lie, because that's not true. It can't be true. But if you're someone who doesn't love yourself, that will feel true, right? So then that's where a lot of Christians and anyone who feels like they need to go to someone else's heaven, they don't feel like they're good enough to be in their own space. So they need to connect with a space outside of themselves, which then naturally leads to them only being able to relate with people who are connecting with the same idea, which is then where we start to see like wars in religion and stuff, because it really works to divide people. It works really well. Like, it works just based on trapping you in thinking that you have to judge others based on how your God is right. And then it's just an ego game at that point. Like, we can take the word God out and just replace it with ego, and it's the same exact thing.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. I don't think a lot of people realize this, but when Christianity first came out, right, everybody didn't have a book. Like, right now, Bibles are everywhere. Everybody has a Bible. The printing press wasn't created until I believe it's in the 1800s. This is kind of like new technology. So in order to know what the word of God was, you had to get it from a priest. The priests were in charge. So the church was like what the government used to be, what corporations are right now, because it went from the church to governments and now corporations. As you see, things are being ran by corporations. You have all of these acronyms nowadays that's been running things. But think about all of the people that just perished based on the burnings, based on just everything. The root of Christianity is so violent.
Yeah.
And I just, it really baffles me. And I understand now why it is this way because of R.E.A.L M. But it used to baffle me why people would still support a religion that has such a gruesome history and still continues to have
Me
a
too.
gruesome present.
And it's baffling when you have self-love like you do, and like everyone who's listening does. They're like, this is where we get into the science of vibration and just developing empathy for knowing that you can't know how other people feel about themselves, like, and you can't take for granted how you feel about yourself. So on that note, we're about to take a quick commercial break. We will be right back. Yeah.